Welcome back, everybody. We're going to work on finishing up this exercise here from Unit 6 in this video. I am turning on the AI companion here to take notes for us as well. You guys might get messages for both the recording and the AI thing. And just to kind of review where we were at, right? We were given these sheets here. We did notice that there were discrepancies between the various tabs, if you guys remember. That was a thing. Oh, we have to do those totals and stuff on the other page, don't we? And then we were also asked to put in a chart, and I did a really quick example last time of just the procedure for inserting a visualization. I didn't do the one that was asked for. I just did a random one, which is a pie chart, just to show you how easy it was. Right now, I am removing this. Right now, you can see I clicked on it. It's got the little control handles on it. And so I can hit the delete button and just get rid of it. So it's just that easy to get rid of a visualization as well. I am going to go back to the instructions here for a moment because, unlike most days, I did not do a lot of prep for class here today. I'm going to another conference this week, so I'm running one of my Thursday classes this afternoon. And people who are in my Thursday Python class, just a heads up, I will not be there on Thursday again because of conferences, and we'll work that out. All right, so we complete the totals for each expenditure, calculate the average, lowest, and highest on both tabs. So we didn't do the other tab, so we've got to go back and do that. Create a bar chart for each department per quarter on the expenditures tab, and then create a pie chart for each department on its own tab. All right, and then there's instructions in the document. And just so you guys remember that, the starter spreadsheet and the instruction set for doing the work. And I know I already have a copy of it, but sometimes I don't like to look for it. I'll just download it again and open it. I don't know if you guys are lazy like that too. All right, so they show us what it looks like completed. And I think we have most of this stuff done, right? And let me just take a look at my sheet here really quick. And notice how we have looks like most of that data is complete, right? Yeah, my machine is being very sluggish. I was kind of hoping to reboot, but that didn't happen. But I think our data is all okay. And while it's tempting right now to go to the other sheet and do the average and all that stuff, I kind of want to do the bar chart here first and call that first tab done. That's kind of how my brain works. So that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to try to create this bar chart. And so let's go in here. And first of all, let's look at what data are we going to build this upon. It says department expenditures, and it lists each one of the departments down here at the bottom. It color codes for each quarter, and then it has the budget amounts there. But when I look at these dollar amounts, which of the dollar amounts on my spreadsheet is it pointing to? And here's what I interpret it as, right? I see it as these numbers up here. And this is how I'm judging it because, this legislative thing here has got amounts that are under 300,000, right? I think that's 300. No, it's 500,000. All of them are under 500,000. And when I look here, I see the same thing all the way across. So it must be the data set up here that they're referring to. So if I'm going to chart this data set, here's how I would do it. I would actually select this data. This is the data I want to chart. And I don't want to do a department total. I just want each department and their quarterly totals. And this is the data set I want to chart. Right. This takes a little bit of practice to figure that out because I could make a bar chart of let's just say the total expenditures or the department totals or the percentages, but from that example, right, that's not what they're doing. They're giving the actual dollar amounts per quarters by departments, and they're color coded. So I'm gonna follow suit, and I selected the data that I believe is generating that. And now I'm going to go up to the insert menu, and then we're going to choose a chart type, right? And notice that they have all these different chart choices up here, and these do get kind of overwhelming. But generally speaking, we know that we want a bar chart. And so I can come over here and I see a column or bar chart. And right away, I'm like, okay, that seems right. This is also, it says insert statistic chart. Okay, I'm not really sure what that is, right? You know, this is like the conversation in my brain. A combo chart, that's probably not it. So I'm just going to come up here to bar chart. And then I'm also going to hit the drop down and I'm going to look at anything here that might kind of bring me close to what I'm searching for. Oh, hey, how about the very first box? Right. So you guys notice we're trying to make it kind of easy, but notice that what I really dig about this tool though is how you can create these various graphics. Like that one's not too bad. It's kind of the same thing, but it's a little more 3D. Yeah, you know, so maybe that one's okay. But it shows you like different ways that you can show the data. And you have to ask yourself, and I'm just kind of throwing this out there as an idea for you, which one of these maybe speaks to you the most, right? There's a reason why we pushed you to one. I'm going to say the 3D one is kind of cool. Where's my little thing? Oh, there it is. Right. But you know what? We really don't need the 3D for what we're doing. I'm just going to go ahead and choose that. And there it is. And you'll notice here that for the most part, all the stuff came in okay. Right. But what's not okay? Well, how about some of the labels here? Right. So one thing that you can do is you can actually come in here and you can actually change the words. And I'm trying to find the spot where you change the words here. This is not the spot where you change the words. I think you just do it right on the form, right? We don't, well, with the chart title, all right, let's start there. And I know where I messed up here. So let me just back out. Where did I mess up? What data should I have included in my data set? Anybody want to type it in? I wasn't being very smart about this. I'm just deleting the whole chart. Department names, yes, and the quarters, right? So if I would have included this data, so that was really kind of a good fumble on my part. And actually this part is enough, right? So the department names will be included now. That'll go on the bottom, and the quarter names will go in the little legend that I was trying to adjust. So let's try that again. Insert bar chart. First one. Oh, there you go. Much better, right? Yeah, much better. And then, of course, if you want to take this and you want to, like, I don't know, move this around or whatever, I would be tempted not to really do much to it. I might argue that the title should be different. Department expenditures would probably be a good adjustment. So this I think I can directly change. So easy, right? Just double click and start typing like so. These are pulled from the data, right? The little series, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth, that ended up on the bottom, but it still shows you the information. It's not in the same spot. Um, and the data looks pretty congruent to what's in this. I do notice though, right? And this is, our data discrepancy. We've got this one column here that's got to be broken. Yeah. I mean, it does not look like the example at all. In fact, the example shows that number, right? That very last one as being under 300,000. So this is one of the things we got to figure out. There's a problem here with our data. I know that we had a little bit of a chat about it last time. Um, So we're going to go into that conversation here in just a second. The last thing I do want to do here is on the spreadsheet, I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit, and I'm doing this with intent so that I can pick up this object and basically move it to the bottom of the screen. Um, this is basically how the example looks. So I'm just trying to follow the example, and there you go. Right, so that I'll call that the bar chart for the first tab. All right, we got to figure out this one data anomaly and which piece of data is anomalous, right? It's this piece of data right here is the anomalous one, because all of these, you see, they're all under 500,000, and then all of a sudden it's 3.4 million. Yeah, that there's clearly an issue there. All right, we'll see if we can figure that out. So I'm just leaving that out there as low hanging fruit. Let's go now to the details tab here. And let's look at this next pie chart. So we do want to do this little thing here, right? Calculate the average, lowest, and highest expenditure on the details tab. So we didn't do that part yet. And so let's see if we can calculate that. So what's the difference here on this tab? How is this data different than the previous tab? Let's just start. Somebody want to type it in the chat? That's fine. You can unmute and just say it too. Right. All right. Just waiting for somebody to drop it in the chat. Right. I mean, okay, so I'll just verbalize it then. Well, it's all the same departments, but each department is just broken down into further detail, right? Yeah. Thank you, Taylor, for responding. I appreciate that. Right. So we just took all the departments, and then each department has like a subcategory, and then we can look at the specific, costs in that one. Now we know that we had one piece of data that was a little bit anomalous, and which one was that? Capital projects, fourth quarter. Where's that piece of information represented here? Because I'm seeing capital projects right here, and then when I combine, I'll just show you, for example, that falls actually under interfund transfers. That's not the department name. Notice that? That's kind of weird. And then what I notice, if I take these two values and combine them together, which is 390, whatever that is, and I come back here and I'll go 390, whatever that is, it's the same number, right? So when I look here, that matches, pretty sure that matches, I'm pretty sure that matches, but that one certainly doesn't. That's at 458, 380, 20. So where, and I think, Kira, were you the one that claims to have figured this out? Where is this? That's a really big discrepancy on this number. Why is this one millions and millions and millions, and here it's only 458,000?
Yeah, I don't know where the actual discrepancy, like which part it was. I just did a lookup to the values that were on this page in the first table. So I used the details tab and I did a lookup and did all the values that way.
Gotcha. Okay, so you used the power of the spreadsheet to pull the right data. Where you, because this is clearly right, and this is okay, part of the lesson here, if you guys aren't picking up on it, the fact that this one is so far off the charts is an indicator that it's a problem, right? The visual is showing you the data is broken, so there's another value for the visuals, right? And once again, like one of those things I could talk about in a lecture all day, but when you see it on the chart, you're like, oh, why is that one like that? The example's not like that. So to me, when I look at this example, then, right, and that one's really low like that, well, somehow we got to fix that. I don't know where that number came from, but this number is wrong for sure. it does not jive with what we're seeing here, right? And in fact, the number I have here is 458, 380, 20. And however you want to capture that value, I think what I'm just going to do here really quick is I'm just going to do a quick little sum, right? Where it's just basically those two. Kira, this is not how you did it, right?
Actually, I did the sum of the details tab. So, but I did it on the expenditures tab. So I referenced the details tab and summed up all of the different values. Yeah, so I did it there.
Okay. And so like now you notice I'm adjusting this. I notice it still doesn't exactly jive. And you notice I'm fixing my formatting here too. With the example, but this seems like more correct to me. Right. Now, if I was in the workplace and this happened to me and I noticed that number was way far off, I would go talk to my boss about it and say, hey man, this number is really far off. Why? Help me look at it. Or you talk to the people that generated the data or where it came from, but there's a reason for it. The other thing that you should do too, and I did this blindly without even checking, right? I'm control Zing right now, is I just didn't look straight up in the cell. Because sometimes when you look in the cell, right, you click in a cell and it's got a formula. Sometimes you look in a cell and it just has a number. And this just had a number. So I'm going to assume, right, that the change I just made, I'm going to assume that that's correct. That's how I'm going to solve it. Whether or not you want to do it that way is up to you. What I did over here, of course, is very quickly, I made a sum. It's not the sum that I want there ultimately. And then if I were to copy this sum, like if I did a control C on this and went over to the other spreadsheet and pasted it in, it's copying a formula and not the number. So what I did is I copied this cell, I did control C, and then I went to a different cell and then I just pasted, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, right? I'm going to paste the value only, so for example, whatever this calculation is, when I go to paste it somewhere else and I do a right click, trying to do a right click to paste here. Hello, there we go. Right. I want you to notice that Excel's got a bunch of different paste options here. And I apologize because my interface is kind of being crappy, but you notice how it's got paste, that'll paste the formula. Then it's got several different types of pastes. You guys noticing this? And in this case, I really just want to paste the value. So it just gives me the number. Then I copied the number and moved the number over to the other sheet. Whether that's the best way or not, that's highly subjective. That's how I did it, right? So just putting it out there. And now I'm deleting this formula because I have the value that I need. But down here, we are going to do a total, average, and minimum, and we're going to do it for all these departments. I'm going to mark this in bold, and I think I'm going to go like this, and then I think I'm going to do a fill probably in the same color. I assume that's the color. All right, this is a little too green for me. All right, let's go with a light green so it doesn't hurt my eyes. That's better. All right, that's me. All right, let's do some totaling. All right, by quarter, what are we totaling? Well, all of it, right? Yes, all of it. All right. So a couple different ways. Just do the sum function. And of course, you can just highlight everything above. That's one way. Close the parentheses, press enter. There's your formula. And then you can copy that across and it will be fine. Another way, and I don't know if you guys are comfortable with doing this, is to use the auto sum. I tend not to do this, but I like to tell people, hey, it's there and it works, right? If it's pretty clear what it needs to do a sum of, notice, you just click it and then press enter to accept it. And then, once the formula is right, you can then copy that across, right? So those numbers should be correct. All right. How do we calculate the average? Well, we know how to do it manually, but that's the last thing we want to do on a spreadsheet is do it manually. And of course, I'm in this habit here of always hitting enter when I shouldn't. average, right? So I'm picking the formula. There we go. And then what are we averaging? Well, everything above.
No, it didn't apply on this one, but a lot of, if you see details like this, a lot of times they'll have like a subtotal under each one. So just make sure that you're checking that you're not adding things twice. So if there were subtotals under each department, then you're not, doubling up by adding that into a big sum.
Excellent point, Kira. Right. And so what she was referring to, like if we were looking at this sheet and let's say they added, a row here that was like a subtotal, for these areas, and there were more numbers like in here, that would change our totals and averages. So you would have to exclude those from the formula is the point. Right? And thank you for bringing that up. With these other ones, these are pretty simple too, right? So we'll do a min, right? This is pretty easy stuff here generally. Close the paren, right? There's the formula again, very simple with the whole range. And then we just drag across. Since that formula is so darn simple, I'm going to copy it. And let's copy that and paste it down here. And then rather than retype a formula, I'm just going to change it to max. There you go. And then in an ideal world, you're going to check it. You notice what happened to me? Copied the formula from here, C5 to C32, and then I pasted it here and it transposed the number C6 to C33. Not what I wanted, so be mindful of that kind of stuff, right? And this is like something you do get used to with spreadsheets, right? Because when I look up here, I noticed right away there wasn't a number as big as 7 million. Here's the biggest number. Okay, that one makes sense. That is the right max. So now that I have one working, all of them should work. Here's another cross check. If I take all of these numbers, look at my total, 33,579,000, and I go back here. Oh, they don't jive, do they?
Yeah, that's why I redid all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, okay, what is the difference then? Right? If I look at this number and then the number I originally had here, that's roughly what the difference is. So somewhere there's 300, there's $3 million missing in the budget somewhere. Hopefully somebody in the city government didn't put it in their pocket. Right. So I wouldn't worry about that fact that, but I want to start waking up your minds to the fact that sometimes data is broken. And if you really ran into this in the real world, well, you'd be pointing that data out to somebody and going, hey, I got an issue here, right? All right. So if you did it like this, I'm happy with that. Now we're going to ask ourselves, how to get the pie chart out of this. So we're going to create a pie chart of the percent spent for each department and put it on its own tab. Okay. All right. So we can do this a couple of different ways. I could make a new tab first, generate a pie chart on the page with the pie chart or on the page with the data, and then just move the chart over to the tab. Or I can start trying to create the chart within the new tab directly, right? So I'm going to try to show you both approaches, right? So for example, well, let's talk about that. If I'm going to do a percentage, what was the ask again? Percent spent for each department on its own tab. Okay, so where's the best place to get that information from? Is it from this sheet? Okay, I got a couple head shakers. And Lynette, I didn't say I don't like AutoSum. It's not my habit to use it. There's a difference than not liking it, by the way. Right. So I just saw that in the chat. All right. Well, don't we already have those percentages here? You guys should be nodding at this point, right? Those are the percentages right there. right? Could I just insert, there's a pie chart, right? And of course, we would probably hit the little drop down. And do we want 2D? Not that one. A 3D? Okay. Is it labeling anything for me though? Okay, let's escape. What about if I highlight the department names and highlight the percent of expenditures? What do you think? Okay, let's do a pie chart on that. And so here's a 3D one. Not too bad, right? You guys agree? Not too bad. Like I could take that one and go with it. Everything's labeled now, so the colors all match up. It has a, you know, a thing listed at the top, percent of expenditures. Could I also add this column and try the same chart? I'm just showing you guys how it works mostly. So if you're wondering, so I could do that, but none of the dollar amounts show up. You notice that? Is there a way I could make them show up? There you go. You guys catch how I did that? I clicked that little plus sign up in the corner and then data labels. And not only did it color code the departments, but it also dropped in the dollar values. And here's kind of a deeper question. All right. Did I have to choose the percent of expenditures to do this? This is an argument you can have, right? So I'm going to keep this chart, right? And then ideally what you would do is you would cut it, like make a new tab. Here, you do this, make a new tab, go back here. Oops. Here, I could grab that graphic, do a cut, move it to this tab, and there it is on its own tab. Okay. And I can make it nice and big and beautiful. And I don't know that I like that, but whatever. Okay, so there it is. Another approach, right? And so some of you may have selected this to do it. Did anybody just select the dollar amounts? Anybody try it that way? Because you can also, if I grab that and grab this, right? And then I do a pie chart. I just want to show you that there's a few different ways to accomplish this. Is really kind of the point here. And I'm doing the 3D one because I kind of like the look of it. Notice how it did the same thing. And I can still add the data labels. Now, why did that work? Here's the answer. A pie chart by its nature shows that of this 100% of stuff, what percentage are all of these values? Here we calculated the percentages, but the pie chart does that automatically because that's the point of a pie chart. How much a percentage of the whole is that expenditure? So either way would have worked, right? I do like it where it's labeled like this because then you can see the dollar amounts too. You know, if people have that question. And you can dig in there and format this stuff and change the fonts and make it bigger and colorful or whatever. That's on you. But a lot of times just the default ones are fine. I just want to show you there's a couple different ways to accomplish that. All right, let's call this one a wrap. I'm going to delete this graphic. And here I put a pie chart. So I would probably say pie chart or you know, percent by department, something like that. And then you have a little graphic to go with it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And because I'm going to consider this one solved, I'm going to call it that, solved, and then save it. All right, that was that exercise. Let's close that one. Let's move on to the next exercise here. And this one has kind of an interesting set of data. And I don't know how many of you were able to finish this one and get it to look just like this. Did anybody here succeed?
I did.
Okay, thank you, Kira. So I'm going to lean on you a little bit here because here's what happens with me whenever I try to make this one. happen. I always fumble with the controls on it and forget how I did it the last time, to get this graphic. So this is kind of interesting because really what this is two different data sets plotted on the same chart, right? Let's go ahead and grab the data set. So there's a CSV file here. So our job is to import the data, and notice it's called weight height, right? There's 10,000 records, so it's not a small amount of data. It's half a meg in size. It's pretty large. And then we want to take all the data points, all 10,000 data points, and plot them on here. One is a data chart of the height weight ratio of men, and the other one is the height weight ratio of women. You can probably guess which dots are which, right? Men are a little bit taller and a little bit larger, right? Pretty logical. So let's grab that file. Let's start by grabbing the CSV. So there it is. Standard procedure should always be when you have a raw data file. And okay, standard procedure for me, because I'm a nerd with data, right? I want to look at my file. I want to see what's in it. And I don't do that in Excel. I actually usually bring it up in a text editor, and I'm bringing up Notepad++. I want to look at what the data is like in its raw format. And here you go, right? 3 columns: gender, height, weight. Those are text. And then we have, gender designations and pretty detailed measurements, right? I don't know what these measurements are. Speculation. Well, one's height. So 73 is not meters. What is it? Inches, maybe? Right? So, like, if I took, a little calculator, there you are. So if I took 73 and divided it by 12, it's 6 foot and a few inches, right? 6 times 12 is 72. So 6'1", 6'2". Those are really very specific numbers, though, with really a lot of decimal places, and I don't get where that was generated. Like, what doctor would ever calculate it like that? Yeah, they wouldn't, right? They would probably round up to the nearest inch is probably what they would do, right? So this must be weight in pounds, right? And I'm just looking at all the numbers here. Do these seem like weights? Yes. Notice, I'm noticing another thing with the data. So this is the geeky stuff I look at, right? And I'm trying to get your minds into this mode. I'm noticing that the first part of the data set seems to be all males. I do want to remind you, if I scroll all the way down, there are 10,000 entries here, right? There's a lot of data here. This is not a small file, right? You're not usually used to traversing it, but notice that somewhere here in the middle, probably right around 5,000. Let's see. There we go. Right around 5,000 is where the list switches over to female. So half of it is male, half of it is female, right? So equal data sets. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now I'm going to go to Excel and do an import. So let's, first of all, I guess make sure Excel is up and running. I'm not sure what's blocking it here, my little PDF reader. Let's close that. And let's get Excel up and running. And then we're going to go into this data import thing again. And the one thing that I always like try to remind people, when you're importing data, a couple different ways to approach it, right? And this is reinforcement here, and more practice makes for better, so appreciate the redundancy for what it is. I could actually directly go and open that CSV file. That's one way to do it, right? So I'm just going to do that. And I'm doing this on purpose just to kind of remind you that there are multiple ways to do this, right? And there's no necessary right and wrong. It really is kind of a workflow preference. And I think a lot of people, when they're working with raw data files like this is what they tend to do, is to look at, all right, so this shows date modified, and I want to find date created and sort by that. There we go. Trying to get my reverse sort there. I'm still trying to find the right file. That's really kind of a weird sort, isn't it? And I hate resorting to searching. Here I am searching. There it is. That's not it. All right. This is kind of weird. And I don't know why my import tool is doing that. So let me just come here and find it this way. Still not finding it. That is really, really weird. You guys tell me, right? There's my download folder. I think this is not taking me to the same place. Right? I just downloaded it. Oh, Dick created is not what I want, right? Totally not. Still not finding it. That is just I am frankly a little perplexed. So it's referring to two different download folder locations, apparently. All right. So since I'm not able to do it that way, here's how goofy I'm going to get with this. Right. I'm going to take that file from here. I'm going to drag it onto my desktop so I can find it. I'm not sure why my system is behaving this way, real frankly, but hey, there's always a different way to do it. So there it is. Right. So now I should be able to open it from here by going to the desktop, correct? If it still doesn't work, then we have to start worrying. You guys seeing what I'm seeing? It's not there. This is really fascinating how it's working. And I'm not really sure why. I'm going to try something kind of radical here. And it's okay that you guys are watching me fumble here. Because I think what's happening in this interface is it's excluding me from certain areas of my hard drive. And so I'm like digging in here into spots where I shouldn't have to find my files. Oh, here's the other issue. Okay. Now I figured out. You guys figure out what my issue was all along? I'm in Excel. I'm hitting the open. When I go to open it, what kind of files does Excel want to open? Excel files, right? CSVs aren't normal. Well, they are, right? If you look at, so the normal thing here is for it to look for Excel files. So it's not seeing it. But if I click on all files, or better yet, if I click on CSV, if I can find that in here somewhere, I know it right here, text files. Oh, now I can see it. All right. Pretty long-winded and convoluted, and I apologize. But this is a brute force open of it, and it does open inside here. And, you know, the other thing is, right, when I go to save this, it's going to try to save it back to a CSV format, which might not necessarily be what I want. I am going to exit out here and close this file right now. So that's kind of intentional. Instead, and this is probably the way you really should do it, right? I think is the preferred approach. You start a new Excel file and then you import your data. You go to your data tab, you get data. This is coming from a CSV file, so I can just hit the preset here, right? We've played with this import tool before. This brings up a different tool embedded into Excel that allows me to basically do the same thing I just did, but processes the file, right? It does all the filtering, cleaning, if you wish, and we're just going to let the tool kind of do the work. This is a pretty generic data set. I'm just going to go ahead and load it, right? I don't see anything here that was broken when I was scrolling through it. I assume it's okay. And so I'm just going to go ahead and load. If I wanted to manipulate that data, I would go into the transform tool. And that's something we'll do more in the future is use that tool. You know, it depends on the data set you're working with. But now the data's in here. And notice it said 10,000 rows loaded. And it has the auto filters up at the top. And we're all set. All right, so that was part one. Took way longer than I wanted. All right. Now we want to create the scatter plot. And we want to plot two sets of data here that come from one set of data. All right. So let's see if we can create this scatter plot using the data that we have here. So I'm just going to come up here to data, insert, and we want to get a scatter plot. And let's click on recommended charts because I don't see one that looks like that there. And when I'm in this mode, I can actually kind of tunnel in and find a scatter plot, right? And then I can say, okay. But this is what I get, right? This is without trying, right? So what did it do? Let's answer that question first. Well, we know our data set's split in two. We have one section that's male, right? And one section that's female. And men and women are about the same height, right? So like one data set is here, but then I can notice these are probably weights, and these are probably all the men, and these are probably all the women, right? That does not look anything like my example. So now what? Anybody have a suggestion? Now, Kira, I'm going to guess that you're going to probably know the answer to this because you probably were working this one too. So feel free to speak up. Is there anything I can adjust here?
No, you've got two separate data points that you're wanting to use, so you're going to need to make helper columns.
Yeah. So really, this is not going to work. Like I can't take this chart and make it look like the other one, no matter what I do.
No.
Yeah. So let's just start by deleting that one. You know, that's probably a good place to start. What if, could I maybe do a filter? Okay, so let's just do female, right? And then let's try to chart it. Oh, all right. Let's just select all the columns like that. Okay. Now it's still plotting it like this. Is there a way we can coerce this to fix it? That's my question for you. And here's where I'm going to leave you. And I know some of you guys are following along with me. Let's take a 5-minute break Actually, let's make it a little longer. Let's make it like an 8 minute break, and 3 of those minutes, or maybe you can do 4 minutes going to the bathroom or a beverage or whatever, and 4 minutes of fiddling with Excel to see if you can get it to show the data in a fashion that kind of matches our example. And then when we come back, we'll do the solution. How's that? Right? This gives you guys a chance to play with it a little bit and see if you can figure out a way to make it happen. All right. So I'll see you guys in, let's call it 8 minutes. So it's, let's come back at like 6:37. All right. So I'll see you guys then. Okay. Welcome back from the break, everybody. We saw like a little bit of fumbling I was doing there and getting charts that I really didn't want out of this. And one of the problems that we have here, right, is we have two distinct data sets that we're trying to plot onto the same chart, and that is a little bit problematic because really in an ideal world they would kind of be handled separately. And I ran a filter on here on the females thinking that would help, and of course it doesn't, right? And you guys can fumble with this all you want, but here, let me ask you a question, right? A scatter plot, when we do a scatter plot, and you can see I got my drawing tools here for a reason. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to draw some lines on the screen. But when we do a scatter plot, we're basically dealing with an XY axis, right? So this is down here, this is our X axis. This is our Y axis. So if I have a data point, let's say my data point is, I'm just making one up here, 10, 50, right? This is the X, that's the Y, right? And so I would go over 10. I don't know what that is on here. Maybe this is 10. And so my X is going to go here, and 50 on the Y is up here somewhere. So I would make a point right here. So when I do a scatter plot, really all I'm doing is I'm taking my XY points, and for each XY point, right? And so for example, X and Y, I would plot that on the chart. And then I got like 5,000 males. I make a dot for each one. And then I would do all the females. There's 5,000 more. And I would put a dot, and they're going to be different colors, right? That's really what we're trying to do. But you notice that as I'm doing that, I don't really need to be plotting the gender, because that's going to be represented with color, right? But so I don't have to chart gender. I'm going to colorize gender, right? So here's how I'm going to deal with this. Really what I'm doing, right, is I want to plot all the males, and notice how like I'm selecting those, and I start scrolling. I'm like, oh wait, I got to scroll down to 5,000 lines, right? And so right there, I'm going to stop, and okay, there's got to be a better way. Okay, so here's the better way, right? I'm just going to grab a little bit of the data, just a little bit, just the males for right now. One thing I do want to know is what exact line do the males end on? And I'm not sure. So I'm going to go down to about row 5,000. So you see how like I've used my little thing there. And I want to know that exact point. And the exact point is row 5,001, right? The first row is a header anyhow. I got 5,000 data points. So the male data ends at row 5,001. And then the female data starts at row 5,002, right? Right. Okay. So that's kind of a given. I'm just taking a little sampling of the male data here, and now I'm going to do the insert. I'm going to go to recommended charts, right? It's going to bring up, oh, there's a scatter plot right up at the top, right? Because it sees my data now, and it says, oh, XY, no problem. I can handle that. And so I'm just going to choose that and let the chart draw itself on the screen. Now, this is only for a small sampling of the male data. Now, here's what we can do, and this is where these tools come in really handy. And I'm going to make this just, I guess, a little bit bigger as I'm working. I'm going to start playing with these controls here, and you'll notice that this bottom control is called the chart filter. Like, so for the way that we have like filters for a column, we can also filter data on a chart. Pretty cool, right? So if I have something on there, I can turn on one thing, turn off another, so that works. And then I have this one here, which is series 1. This is the data I have up on the screen, right? Notice that I can go to this control here on the side. So I'm going to click on that, and it brings up this little panel. So first thing I can do is I can actually edit the name. So this is male data. So I'm going to type male up here. Okay. Then it says series X values. And notice what it does is it finds the name of the sheet, right? Or excuse me, the tab. So the first part of this X series, and I know this is kind of hard to see, but it just says equals weight height, which is the tab name. And then it's got a little exclamation point in there. And then it has the data range that I've selected, B2 to B23. All right, that's for the X values. So these are going to be on the bottom. So height's going to be represented on the bottom. Weight's going to be represented on the Y. And it makes sense, right? The 73 inches is about 6'1". So that's here. And then very few people are 300 pounds or more, but there's some, right? But that makes sense, right? So this is weight, that's height. But I don't want my data set to end at 23. So often what you can do here is you can click these little boxes, and I know my data set ends at row 5001. So I'm just typing it in manually because it's easier than click, drag, and scroll for 5 minutes, right? You don't really want to do it that way. So I'm manually typing that in. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. And I can actually type right in this interface, by the way. You don't have to go to that breakout screen. And I'm going to do the same thing for Y, right? This points to the B column. That points to the C column. Now I'm going to say okay. And now it's selected all the data points. Okay, not the prettiest thing, mind you, but a little bit more like what I have. Let's go ahead and enter the female information in here as well. And so here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to this filter, right? And I want you to notice here that we have, this ability to select the data at the bottom there. You guys catch how I did that? I don't want to move too fast because I know sometimes I lose people when I do that. But there's this box down here that allows you to select data. And nothing says that you have to use only one data set on a chart. So notice the male data set appears here. I can actually add a data set by clicking this button. And I'm going to call this one female, right? We're going to select some of the information on the chart. And you know what? I probably should have pre-selected it, but I didn't. So now I'm going to have to come down here and I'm going to have to scroll down to that spot. But I don't, like, as with the male stuff, I don't need to select all of it. I just want a little sampling. And right now we're doing X values. So I'm just a little sampling. And then we know that goes down to row 10,001. So I'm manually typing that is, and it says there's a problem with my formula. What's the problem with my formula? Let's try that again. What did I break here? Oh, I added a B in there that I shouldn't have added. Okay, so let's try that again. All right. This is female. So we want to start with scrolling forever. And if you know, and here's the thing, if you know the numbers, type them in. So we start at row 5002, right? And there's dollar signs in there. You'd be mindful of that too. And then I'm going to put in a colon, and then I'm going to type in my, and am I grabbing the right column? Yeah, you guys will notice. No, I'm not grabbing the right column. Holding on my shift key too long there. This should be B. Is it letting me? All right, let's try that again. And you can see me fumbling with the tool, so don't feel bad if you're fumbling with the tool too. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna blow all that away. Let's try that one more time. So I'm just gonna find my data here and then just manually adjust it. All right, we're really close here. Here we go. Here's my data. So this is my X series. And the only tweak I really need to make to to this is that ending number. You got to just proceed really, really cautiously. You see me like messing it up a ton. Now we're going to do the Y values. I'm just going to select a few and follow the same technique again. It only took me, what, 5 tries to land on doing it correctly. Okay, now we're going to say okay. So now I have 2 data sets. Now I'm going to click OK. Let's see what the chart looks like. Remember, the chart's way up there. So there's the data sets. Okay, much closer, much, much closer. However, okay, notice all the data seems to conglomerate in an area. Do I really need all this white space in here? That can be controlled also. This is a formatting issue, but here's the good news. The data's on the screen now. So I think this is really good. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to start dealing with the chart style a little bit. And actually, I want to let me go back here for just a second, and I apologize because I did want to show this tool, right? So this allows me then, to basically highlight that data and only show the data I want to show. So, for example, if I just want to show female, if I just want to show male, or I want to show both, I can control those things here. There are also, let's go ahead and apply that. Thank you very much. The commands up here, and one of the things that we are probably going to want to do is control how the axes are enabled here, right? So in other words, we do want to show them. We also want to have basically control over where they appear on the chart. So in other words, how do I limit this range here? And there is as part of the formatting commands, and I apologize because I'm fumbling with my tools here, probably a little bit more than I should. And this is not my spot where I find this, and I apologize that I'm fumbling so much to try to find it. So we have our access titles. We should probably set those too. So what's our access titles? Which one is this? This is weight. All right, so that should be locked in. And the horizontal one, I guess I turned that off accidentally. This one's going to be height. And really, truly, like if you're labeling stuff, height, what height? Okay, height in inches, right, is what it is. And this is weight in pounds. So I would argue that that's important. The other thing that you can do here, and now see, it takes me sometimes a while to remember like how to do this stuff, real frankly. But what if we want to edit the axis itself? You can actually double click it. And then here, you should be able, if I click on the right area here, to get to the access. Okay, so there we are. And I apologize that it takes me a little bit while to get into it, but I'm notice I'm highlighting the access. I went into access options, and then finally it gave me this little button. I was trying to get this button to appear basically, but you notice like it gives me a range here of 0 to 90. So that's what we see on the bottom, 0 to 90. I'm going to say that anything below 50, we don't need. So I don't need to start at 0. I can start at 50. And you know what? There's nothing above 80. Nobody's that tall. So I can like end this at, I'm going to say 80 is probably better. Right. And there you go. Right. Now, from top to bottom, that one, honestly, that one's not really that far off. You could probably stick with that one the way you want it. But notice that if I click here on the axis, and once again, here I am trying to get that toolbar to appear. There we go. This one goes from 0 to 300. Okay, nobody's below 50. So once again, I can start at 50. And okay, there's a couple people that get up to close to 300, and that's probably okay. So much, much closer yet, right? Now I want to hit um this tool, right? Where we can actually go through and we can start changing the styles of the dots. And you notice how there's a few different ones here. And I'm not sure which one is the best, you guys. And I would say, fine, this is kind of like the one in the drawing, I guess, right? This one is kind of like the one in the drawing. So I'm probably going to go with this one. But here's the completed solution. So tweaking the axis, laying two data sets over each other, right? And I just want to remind you guys, like the steps I took to do that. I went ahead and created the scatter plot. And then after it was propagating its data, I used this little tool here for each series of data to label it and then choose the right ranges. And you can type those in manually or whatever. The scroll approach is very difficult when you have a huge data set, but that was the technique. The advantage of this, of course, is the chart then also becomes kind of interactive, right? And you can go in here and you can play with those filters and just look at one set of data or the other. And I think that's pretty neat. All right. Well, let's call this complete. So this video ends here.